Excellent. And we're in a very exciting, yet another exciting morning here on the Good Listening To podcast. I'm delighted to bring into the clearing Julian Page, who is the Managing Director of the Livingstone Tanzania Trust, an entity that has an extraordinary imperative linked to the African philosophy of Ubuntu, which I'll invite Julian to tell us about shortly. But it's a very philanthropic and altruistic endeavour, and I'm hugely respectful of the very, very significant and important work that you're doing in that region. I have a resonance with Livingstone in that I grew up in Uganda, and I've even been to what I think is called the Peak Memorial, where Stanley found Livingstone. He was quite ill at the time, apparently, and said, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume." But we'll let you tell us all the backstory of that. But please, welcome to the clearing, Julian Page.
Thank you, Chris. Very exciting to be here.
Wonderful. And how's morale? How are you today?
Very well, thank you. The sky is as grey can be, but happy inside. So that's good.
Love that. Happy inside is a lovely thing to say. So first of all, I'm going to bring you into a clearing, which we're going to talk about and what that metaphorically means to you. But just to give yourself some context as to, just before we talk about the storytelling metaphors I'm going to unpack for us, what brought you to the clearing of the Livingstone Tanzania Trust? What was your journey towards that passion and endeavour?
Well, I had travelled lots as a kid. I went to Africa when I was 18. For 3 or 4 months wandering around, and have been back numerous times since, and just fell in love with the place completely. And then when I was working at the law firm that I worked at as a facilities manager, there was a move to merge two firms together, and the culture was going to change from work hard, play hard to work hard. And that didn't seem like something I wanted necessarily to be part of. Yes. So it gave me a choice to rethink what I wanted to do. And I remember watching a video clip a number of years ago on Red Nose Day of a 3-year-old street child who was living with her sister on the streets. And the sister was 1, and the sister couldn't walk because rats had eaten her feet. Ooh. And I was so appalled and horrified. You know, I gave 50 quid, which at the time was a lot of money for me. But that image never left me. And then when my brother had kids and they were kind of like the same sort of age, I was thinking, how on earth would my brother's kids cope in that environment? They just wouldn't, you know. So I just thought, you know what, now is the time to go and do something, because the social inequality was just shocking. And I had to chat with some friends, and they said, you can't just go and hug an orphan. It doesn't work like that. You've got to have some skills. You've got to have something to offer. So I went back to university and did a master's in international development with sustainable tourism. And then through that, did my dissertation on poverty alleviation through tourism in Tanzania. And then thought, you know what, I'm 39, no one's going to give me a job because I've got no experience in this field whatsoever. Let's just get on and do it. So together with a friend of mine, we got together and we got on with it. And that's kind of how it started.
Wonderful. And that proactivity, and as you say, it's not just about hugging an orphan or sitting there, you know, metaphorically on our sofa just going, oh, and thinking that we're doing something. I know paying money towards charities is really, really important, which is partly what, you know, I hope this episode will help drive us towards as well. But I love your proactivity and just the calling that I perceived that you had. And do you think of it as being a calling?
No, not at all. I mean, I went to a Quaker school, and Quakerism is all about, you know, caring about society. And we all have a role in society to contribute to society in some fashion. And at the time, what I was doing was contributing money every now and again to different charities. But to have the opportunity to actually be a valued contributor was, you know, quite an exciting step for me. So perhaps it was very selfish for me. I'd worked 13 years in a basement, and suddenly I was going to be working in Africa and seeing the sky and people and life.
Yes.
And it's a fantastic choice.
And that's a lovely segue into the Ubuntu philosophy, the African philosophy that I know the Livingstone Tanzania Trust has dear to its heart. Do you want to just tell us a bit about what that philosophy is?
That philosophy is based around the idea that how can you be happy when your neighbour isn't? So if you think of, let's say, the current South Africa today, you've got lots of people living in beautiful homes surrounded by barbed wire. And then outside of the barbed wire, lots of people who are not happy, not living in poverty or living in really challenging environments.
Yes.
And so who's happy in that environment? There's got to be much more equitable distribution of wealth.
Yes.
I'm not talking communism or anything like that, but it is about, sharing and caring. And, if you've got something that your neighbour needs, you support your neighbour.
Yes, absolutely. I just love that philosophy. It's really, really rich indeed. And it's all about, as I understand it, you want to offer help and support until it is no longer needed or required, which is such a lovely endeavour in the communities in which you operate.
Well, we have a kind of view of charity work in that many charities do brilliant work on education in a country, in Africa, let's say. And they'll do an education program and think that's going to alleviate poverty. Or they'll do a health program and think that will alleviate poverty. And individually, they're all brilliant things. But actually, as a community, poverty is caused by so many things that actually you need to be addressing all of them in the community if you really want to alleviate poverty. And that's why we say we'll stay there as long as it takes, because we know that there are so many different angles to approach in order to help people address poverty for themselves.
And as the story has evolved and I hope come full circle, have Red Nose and the charity of that got involved in helping the Livingstone Tanzania Trust over time?
No, sadly not. Red Nose Day is a challenge for us because they're very specific on the things that they will sponsor and support, which are all great things, but not necessarily things that we deal with. So they might focus specifically on disabled children in schools. Well, that's not such an issue for us.
So what is your raison d'etre then? What is the cause that you're really, I know it's quite universal. You want to be there and be present whilst all help is required. So what would you say the main thrust of the Livingstone Tanzania Trust is in terms of what you want to help?
Our main aim is to help people develop the skills and knowledge so that they can release the potential they have inside themselves to be living a healthy, happy life where all are respected and valued. So it's about helping people get the knowledge and skills to do things for themselves.
So self-empowerment. So somewhere in there is the allegory of that story about, if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. Whereas if you just give him a fish, or woman, they will just eat once. So this is about longevity and sustainability. Yes,
and we kind of tackle it from, you've got to look at the kids who are the kids of today. They've got to get the knowledge and skills in their schools so that they can progress to secondary school, to university, so that you can deal with the future. Yes. But you've still got to deal with the parents of those kids.
Yes.
You can't just ignore them. They're part of the problem, not part of the problem, part of the story.
Yes.
In that if they can't afford to send their children to secondary school or university, then the education is going to stop. So you support them to improve their livelihoods so that they can afford to send their kids on further education.
So if I may, to your own story within this clearing, which we're going to come on to more explicitly in a moment, I'm not trying to age you, but you did say you went and retrained at 39 when you had a bit of an awakening of sorts. So how many years have you now been MD of the Livingstone Tanzania Trust?
14, I think it is. So it's been going a long time now. It's quite shocking.
And it is now. It's basically a life quest. You can tell that it's absolutely your reason for being.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think I have a fantastic job. I work with brilliant people. I work in an environment in the charity world where everybody is hugely positive, and that's just great to be working with positive people. And I get to go to Tanzania and work with brilliant people out there.
Yes.
So love it. Wouldn't change it for a world.
And in terms of where your heart chimed the most, when you were 18 and sort of travelling around Africa backpacking, did you go to the region that you now specialise in?
Well, I went to Tanzania where I very nearly got mugged. Um, but no, we didn't stay there very long. So not really.
Right.
So the reason that I chose Tanzania was because it has always been very stable politically. And that Julius Nyerere, who is the kind of founding father of Tanzania, is a fantastic leader. He has created a peaceful environment in that country for 50 odd years now.
Yes.
And yeah, he's an inspiration.
And have you met the man yourself?
No, sadly, he passed away quite a long time ago.
Sorry.
But his legacy still lives on. And in fact, one of the things we try to do is implement some of the things that he failed to achieve because the ideas were so right, but he didn't have the resources at the time to do it. So,
okay.
So that's things like he wanted schools to be self-sufficient, self-reliant.
Yeah.
So we now work with schools to help them establish income generation activities.
Yeah.
Like market gardens, farms, cattle, fish, whatever. And then that money that they generate, the profits from that, go back into the school to help maintain the schools.
And mentioning fish there, that's the banks of Lake Tanganyika, which, coming again full circle, is where Livingstone and Stanley had that very iconic exchange of Dr. Livingstone, I presume.
Yes, at Ujiji.
Ujiji.
And interestingly, or not, as you may think, it's 150 years next year from that activity. So, yeah, we will try and celebrate that in some fashion. Don't know how yet.
Well, if I can help in any way with that, it will be my pleasure. And I hope you get a doctorate someday so we can greet you there and say, Dr. Page, I presume.
I hope so.
And by the way,
he never said that. That's always just a myth.
Yes. And we've been friends, by the way, for many years, I know. But I always think of you in your charitable works because of the cartoon Madagascar. I always think of you as being King Julian. Because there you are, King Julian on the banks of Lake Tanganyika. Fantastic.
Shaking my booty.
Shaking, yes.
Which I'm not going to do now for you.
We can do that at the end. It's a podcast, so you can dance to your heart's content. It's good. But we are going to use the film version as well. Anyway, thank you for that wonderful description and introduction. I'll come back to a particular question about your charity at the end. Remembering again, it's the Livingstone Tanzania Trust. So, Julian Page, Dr. Livingstone, I presume here you are. I'm going to bring you to a clearing now. Now, it's a metaphor which is open to your interpretation. For you, Julian Page, as the man that you are, what is a clearing like for you? Where do you go to get clutter-free, inspirational and able to think?
I go to Richmond Park, which is about 10 miles away from here. There's a pond, not the big pen ponds, but there's a little small pond that's got a bench by it.
Yeah.
And very few people go there. And I just go there and I take my book. And then after about half an hour, I get bored of reading my book and I just sit there and contemplate, and things arrive and things go, and you just And if you stay there for about 2 hours, you're getting cold and you kind of go, yes, the cold is telling me I'm alive. So deal with it, move on, keep thinking. And then when you get a sore bum, it's time to get up and go. But it's a beautiful place for me.
A great philosophy. When you get a sore bum, it's time to get up and go. We can quote you on that, Dr. Julian Page. That's phenomenal.
Oh dear, no, please don't.
So if I may, I'm going to join you at your bench. And I noticed that I thought when you first said I take my book that you were going to be a journaler, but you're actually talking about reading a book of choice. Is that right?
Yes, which would probably be some escapist trash, an airport read.
What are we currently reading, dear?
I'm reading Lee Child's Jack Reacher book.
I read lots of those. In fact, there's one by my bed over there. I can't see the title.
They're really good. They don't challenge you in any way, and it's just a good story to follow through on.
I love that. And on the words follow through on, we shall now follow through to the next part of the clearing. So if I may join you at your bench next to the lake in Richmond Park, metaphorically, and I brought a tree with me. Can you see any trees from where you're sat anyway?
Yeah.
Excellent. So this is a metaphorical or even a literal tree, if you like. In fact, recently in coming up with the idea for my logo for the Good Listening To podcast, the best ideas happen outdoors, as Nietzsche said, and I found a tree which I thought, gosh, boom, that is the tree I've been thinking about. So nature is a great inspirational in that regard. So anyway, we're going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. And you were kind enough to agree to prepare a storytelling exercise before we joined each other in this conversation today, and it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you've had 5 minutes at Julian Page from the Livingstone Tanzania Trust to think about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you, Julian Page, that we couldn't possibly know until you tell us. Now, don't panic, Mr. Mannering. You don't have to do all of that in one big monumental tree shake and then big heavy apples fall out. You can pick those apples out and chomp into them as you see fit. So where would you like to start on the open road of that exercise?
Well, I think starting at the beginning with the Quaker school that I went to that I talked about earlier. And that shaped me because it was a school that didn't necessarily focus on academia. You were allowed to be yourself. And in fact, they encouraged you to be an individual. So do you remember that scene from the Dead Poets Society, where Robin Williams is getting them all to walk around the courtyard and they all end up in pace with each other? Well, that's exactly what the school I went to encourages you not to do.
Ah, okay.
So you remember the guy who sat on the wall and said, I respectfully decide to not participate. That's exactly what the school was all about. It gave you the space and the choice to be an individual.
I love the idea that there's a maverickness to being on the wall, the outsider, the outlier, thinking, do you know what, I'm not going to do what everyone else is doing. And indeed, in your own journey, you definitely found a bit of a T-junction where you decided to turn left rather than right in terms of changing your career.
Yeah, and I think that's what Quakerism, and I'm not a particularly good Quaker, but it allows you to be that kind of individual to make those choices.
Rather than
Quakers for me are people who very quietly go about bringing about change. And they don't brag about it and they don't boast about it. They just quietly get on with it, which also makes it very difficult for me trying to run a charity where you're supposed to promote everything.
Yes.
I struggle with that element because it just feels so wrong. And that's all from that kind of...
There is such a delicious humility in the value of the man that you're being, Julian Page. So I absolutely love how you're chiming with that particular value. And indeed, one of the hopes with me interviewing you is that we can sort of amplify the voice of you and the Livingstone Tanzania Trust so that you can get more of what you deserve, which is a wonderful endeavour that you're all about.
That's very kind, thank you.
So number 1 is the Quaker school. And by the way, you made me think not just of Dead Poets Society, of that lovely Monty Python thing of we're all individuals. I'm not. I'm going to go to Tanzania. So yes. So what else has shaped you?
So what else has shaped me? So as I said earlier, I went off to Africa with some friends of mine when I was 18. And we did a bit in Egypt and then Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe. And there was a discussion about going into South Africa. And this was in 1986. And I didn't know much about the apartheid situation. But we had that discussion about, well, we're not going to go into that country. One of my friends is a Zambian and she wouldn't be allowed to stay in the same hotel as us and wouldn't be allowed on the same bus as us. And it was kind of like, well, what? That's ridiculous. So coming back from that trip, I kind of like decided to look it up and what is all of this, and learned so much about the anti-apartheid movement and the situation in South Africa. And then when I got to Manchester University, Manchester Poly as it was, helped set up the anti-apartheid group there. There were a small group of us, and we went on our marches and we came down to London and demonstrated, and we spent time sticking stickers on fruit, danger contaminated with apartheid, all of that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And that whole realization of global social inequity, really hit home with me and just made me realize that actually the world's not necessarily a very nice place, having lived in my lovely bubble.
Yes.
And that you can either accept it or you can challenge it. And I wanted to challenge it because that's not the world I wanted to live in. So that trip had a lot of, apart from the fact that I saw beautiful places, had that kind of great learning experience for me.
That's one of the most profound illustrations of how something as an early formative experience in our early adulthood, can be absolutely something that shapes us. So the fact that Africa became very much implanted in you as part of your soul chime is very, very interesting.
It was, I think that for me, there was that whole space. The people were just so phenomenally friendly and generous of spirit. And yes, they might not have had lots, and they might have lived in very challenging environments, or at least challenging from my perspective. But they're still hugely generous. And when you come back to the UK, those things disappear very quickly, and you don't find people so often who are of generous character. Except now in the world that I inhabit, I'm surrounded by them, which is fantastic. So I like that.
Lovely. And what else has shaped you, Julian Page?
What else has shaped me? I went to catering college up in Manchester, and we were taught there to be jack of all trades, a master of none. So we were taught to be a chef, to be a waiter, to be a front of house person, all of these things. So that if needs be, we could pop into the kitchen if the breakfast chef hadn't turned up and do stuff. And that kind of led me into facilities management as a career. And I found myself in a situation where I'm literally pulling strings to get other people to do things. So I'm not delivering the mail in the law firm. Other people are, but I'm managing them, supporting them to do it. I'm supporting the cleaners, the receptionists, the security, all of those other things. So I found that actually being a jack of all trades is a fantastic thing and something to be cherished. And then when I kind of started this role, I found that actually I can continue being jack of all trades because I'm not a master in international development in the slightest, but I have surrounded myself with people who are significantly cleverer than I am. And all I have to do is make sure that they've got the space to do all of the things they're brilliant at. And so that whole going into the catering world completely shaped me into how I manage things. And I remember working with all sorts of managers in the hotels and things, and learning from them so much as to how not to manage. I can't think of a single good manager I had in a hotel. And so I've taken all of the bits that I thought were rubbish and thrown them out and just worked with all the things that I thought were good. And I try and work with that as much as possible.
And that leadership philosophy of surround yourself with people who are great and even greater than ourselves in their own specialist ability is a beautiful philosophy. And the fact we've learnt monumentally seismic lessons from instances of great leadership, hurrah, but also the toxic ones make us even better leaders because we can throw those out and put them in the bin, as you say.
Yes, absolutely.
And
so that to me was really informative, really great.
And it made me think of a sort of puppet meister there when you talked about pulling strings. The old style puppets of it's a word beginning with M that I can't remember now, but it's this idea of a puppet marionette. That's the word that I couldn't quite come up with. So you're a enabler of others and a bit of a marionette of pulling other people's strings to enable them to do what they do best.
Hope so. Yes.
And again, there's just your humility keeps coming through, which is just a joy to observe. And anything else? I think we're nearly at the end of the what has shaped you. This is number 4 coming.
Well, no, the other things that shaped me were that video of those kids, and thinking of my brother's kids, and that was just profoundly shocking to me. Yes. And that's really what then shaped the rest of my direction.
Yes. And I know your brother well as well, and his children that you're talking about, and what a cherished uncle I know you are.
Well, it's Fletcher's footprint on our as our logo.
Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Louis refused to have his little foot painted, and Fletch was too young to object, so we just took it off him. Sorry, Fletch.
Yeah, you didn't steal his foot, just to be clear. You just imprinted it for a few moments.
Yes.
I so love that, because of course that's beautiful, because most people just assume that's a graphic of a foot, but the fact it's your nephew's foot, Boff Fletcher, what a cool name as well, and I know Fletcher well too. The geezer's foot is there on the Livingstone Tanzania Trust logo. I love that, and that's something I didn't know. Thank you very much.
So that footprint very much relates to those two girls. It also relates to that whole philosophy of when you travel, leave only your footprint mentality.
Yeah, don't leave your rubbish behind and all.
Yes.
You're playing.
Yes.
Yes.
Because originally the Livingstone Tanzania Trust was going to be, the reason we're called Livingstone in the first place was that we were going to follow Livingstone's for his paths, his routes from the coast to Ujiji and other treks that he went on. And then we were going to follow others like Burton and Speke. And we were going to support the villages and communities that we went through. But we found... Sorry, go on.
You've just reminded me. I misquoted it. It's the Speke Memorial that I visited in Uganda. I called it Peak at the beginning, but it was the Speke. You're quite right. Sorry, that's
okay. We found so many Tanzanians had died on those treks that we thought it was completely immoral to carry on with that idea. So we just binned it. But by that time, we'd already registered ourselves with Livingstone.
And that's very interesting. The sort of zeitgeist this year, particularly with statues of the past, icons of the past being sort of revisited because their story is darker. I mean, even where I live in Bristol, it's, that I remember, as everyone knows, it's steeped in the blood of slavery, the foundation stones of same, and this year, very iconically, of course, the Colston statue was, in a wonderful moment of promenade theatre, was sort of felled, clanged towards the harbour and plopped in. And it was called the Harbouring a Well-Known Criminal. Woohoo!
Hey!
Whee!
Well, Livingstone seems to have escaped that on the basis that he was very anti-slave trade at the time and fought against the slave trade. He was a grumpy Scotsman who really didn't like white people at the end. He was sent out, or he went out to try and convert people, but found that actually they didn't need converting, and he respected them and he respected their lifestyles. And that's why he stayed there. And so when he was allegedly lost, he wasn't lost at all. And when Stanley turned up to find him, he found him, yes, he was sick, but he was living very happily, thank you very much indeed, not lost at all.
He had actually found himself, he wasn't lost at all.
Yes, he had found himself. And so you have Livingstone in Zambia, where there are still statues that stand proudly. And the Zambians haven't got rid of the name Livingstone for that town, because I assume there's still a lot of respect for him. And when I talk to the people in Tanzania about the name, they've never even heard of him. So they don't have a problem with it, which is interesting, because we have had that discussion about whether or not we should change the name. And so far, we've not.
For all the right reasons, it sounds. And I just love, just to revisit that lovely expression of you have to get lost in order to find yourself. It's lovely. So I believe that's shaken the apples of what's shaped you. So now what the three things that inspire you?
The three things that inspire me. Well, I've had to think about that. I decided that saying three people wouldn't work, but I'm going to group them into people. And I've got on my list Biko, Mandela and Gandhi, as people of phenomenal strength of character who had the courage to follow through with all of their actions, all in different ways. So Gandhi was completely into peace. Mandela was tactically, wanted peace, but was denied it. And Biko ignored all of those things and was talking about actually you've got to change from within, and that the oppression from the white people in South Africa, we are allowing them to oppress us. We have to start saying black is beautiful. We've got to stop having these negative connotations about ourselves. And once we have that, then we can go forward and challenge the apartheid state. And it's because that mentality was so much more dangerous than fighting. That's, I suspect, why they killed him. But yeah, so those three are kind of like high up on my list of people that who inspire me, keep me going.
I just thought that was so articulately put, who and why. I just want to leave that floating there, because I think you've done a beautiful job of the reason for that source of inspiration.
Okay, cool. The other people who inspire me are travelers, people who have that desire, a bit like me, to just keep looking over the horizon and wondering what's there. Yes. And just keep going, because it's not that the grass is greener, it's that the grass is different.
Yes.
And that the culture is different, and the life is different. And what can we learn from being in different places, from different people, that can enrich us in some way? So I always, when there's travel stories, when there's travel films, I just can't not watch them. I think they're brilliant.
And Michael Palin, in that regard, for me, is an absolute legend. I've so enjoyed. There's been a retrospective of his various travel brilliance, and it's absolutely the idea of just going somewhere with open, fresh eyes.
Yes, and he's such a gentleman, isn't he? The way he does it and the way he talks to everybody, he's so gentle and kind.
Yes. And if I, just while I may, just to insert a cheeky little plug here, he's very, 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 very much on my ladder. Someday, he doesn't know I'm coming for him, but I'd love to give Michael Palin a good listening to. Just putting it there.
Well, I'll listen.
Thanks for coming. Yes. So moving on, back to you. More
back to me. Forget Michael. It's quite funny saying Michael, isn't it? Anyway,
Sir Michael.
Oh goodness. The other people who inspire me are my colleagues, because again, they're just brilliant. Every day I talk to them, and every day I learn something from them, and the patience and tolerance of me on a day-to-day basis is admirable, because I know that I can be extremely annoying and picky, and they tolerate me every day and inspire me every day. So I'm very happy to be working with the team that I have.
And my very, very, very best guess, Julian, as to why they tolerate you is because you care so profoundly and so deeply for your common purpose.
We all do. Yeah, and that's why we work well together. And that's why we bounce off each other. And that's why they tell me I'm wrong, and we change things. And it's very much a kind of flat pyramid, if you know what I mean.
I do.
There's a leadership structure. We're all, there are three of us in the ops team, and we discuss nearly everything, and we agree nearly everything. And it's very rare that I ever put my foot down and say, no, I want to do this.
Beautiful. And there is this a lovely notion within healthy teams of healthy conflict, which resonates with, I know that there's lots of research about that sort of thing, but there's a very seminal writer called Len Sioni who talks about, imagine a very old scuzzy leather football in the sands of the arena of conflict, and as a good team you should be able to kick the crap out of it, not each other, for the notion of healthy conflict, which I really loved as a metaphor. But it sounds like you've got a very healthy, robust team there with
Well, we for me, it's important that you create the space for everyone to feel confident that even if they say something silly, it'll be listened to, and the space for people to know that if they say something like, Julian, you're being an idiot, that there's not going to be repercussions down the road for that.
Yes.
And that's really important, because, we have a healthy respect for each other.
Beautiful. And again, there is really lovely, really strident leadership qualities in it, but it's so anchored in humility in your case, which I'm really enjoying.
Cool. Thank you.
You're
I don't know what to say to that.
Just take it.
But we have the same in Tanzania. When we're out in Tanzania working with the team out there, again, it's, we all sit around an Arthur-style table and have those discussions. And they're quite weird in the respect that they often say that when people come in, they don't know who's the boss, because everybody is talking and everybody is listening, which I thought was quite nice. I like that idea.
And I love the fact it's an Arthurian table. And there is a joke. Obviously, I'm a comedian, so I just have to put this in there. Do you remember the name of the knight that actually constructed the Arthurian table? It was Circumference. Oh, God. Anyway, back to you, dear.
So yeah, they're the three inspirational things that I was challenged to think about.
And I'm loving the shaking of your tree. And now we're going to go on to two things that never fail to grab your attention.
That was really hard because I think I've got OCD and everything attracts my attention. Something goes ping and you, oh, what's the ping? Oh, what's that? Oh, so you're constantly, there's so many ways to be stimulated nowadays that it's really difficult to choose.
There's a dog character in the film Up, I think it is, and this is a visual joke, so if you're listening on the podcast, this is a bit crap. But if you just look at the screen moment, Julian, you go, oh, hi, oh, squirrel, and then you're basically off for a squirrel.
Exactly. That's me, I think.
Yes.
So any new projects or ideas that come along, I'm absolutely, let's do it. And then tomorrow it's kind of, what was that idea you said? Completely gone.
So what's your current squirrel, would you say, that has grabbed your attention?
My current squirrel is that we're planning to do a virtual trek to Tanzania, which is basically trying to get 50 people to join us for a 10-week virtual trek. And the people can choose their own distance that they want to walk. But collectively, you add all of them up, and we're going to be walking from Tooting to Tanzania. So I'm trying to work out how to do that, and that'll be fun.
I love that. So yes, we'll do it. We'll do a sort of captain's log supplemental. I call my supplemental programs a G&T with me CG rather than a GLT with me CG. See what I'm doing there? But we can talk about that project specifically if you like. From Tooting to Tanzania sounds like it needs to be a thing.
Exactly. Everybody needs to be doing it. It's going to start in January, so it's a kick the kilos type activity, which I thought was very corny, but I quite liked it.
Lovely alliteration. Tooting to Tanzania, kick the kilos.
And the other one, I forgot. No, and the other thing is, it's actually because it's January and everyone's a bit depressed. It's all very dark, and probably lockdown scenarios are there. Everybody needs to get out of the house.
Yes, they do.
And so having a kind of 2-mile challenge every single day, this could be the thing that motivates people just to get out and get some air in their head, because that's really important.
Lovely. And I'm assuming there might be sponsorship attached to that. So there's some cause at the heart, obviously. So yes, we'll definitely do a sort of captain's log supplemental about that if you allow me to.
Oh, no, that'd be fantastic. So the things that grab my attention, apart from that, obviously my friends grab my attention. If the phone goes and it's a friend, you don't ever think, I'll not now, because friends are the most important thing. Friends and family, always very important. But more intellectually, things that grab my attention are people who want to bring about change. My whole life seems to be about change and helping people bring about change. And how do other people do it? So when I look on my bookshelf, it is all about people who have brought change, be they dictators who have brought change in a horrible way or peaceful people who have brought things in a different way. It's all about how do people do it and how should we be doing it? And how should we do it in this country, because it's clearly needed.
Yes, and indeed I know that philosophy is also embedded within the Livingstone Tanzania Trust website as well, where you talked about change management, but the word change starting with a contagious desire to change.
Oh, did we write that? That sounds clever.
It's in your website, and I really liked it and thought, boom. So you're all over that. That's awesome.
So it's also interesting, and I don't know if this is the right thing to tell people on a public thing, but one of my great ancestors of some sort was a member of the gunpowder plot. So he was one of the 12 who got hung, quartered, and whatever for trying to bring about change. Now, obviously, we don't condone their methods of bringing about change.
Yes.
But it was quite interesting that to see that family members have been trying to bring about change for hundreds of years. So in a little way, I'm quite proud of that.
Yes, in a little way, your DNA is all about change. I love that.
Yeah. So fingers crossed we don't resort.
Yes, and rather than a gunpowder plot, you've got a squirrel plot with good ideas of alliteration. Tooting to Tanzania, did you say kick the kilos, you said, didn't you?
Kick the kilos. Well, that's for me, really, but people can kick whatever they want.
Lovely. So anything else? Well, we've done that now. So now I think we step away, and it's now one quirky or unusual fact about you, King Julian, that we couldn't possibly know until you tell us.
That was quite challenging, but I wake myself up sometimes in the middle of the night laughing. I'm not sure if I've told myself a joke or I've seen something funny, but I start laughing and then I wake myself up, and I kind of like that. It's quite good.
I kind of like that too, and I hope this is inappropriate. I quite like to be there when you woke up doing it, but I'm not trying to be weird or anything. It's just that's a very quirky, lovely thing. It appeals to my sense of humour. When was the last time that you woke up doing that?
Not for a couple of years now, actually.
So you must report back and tell us the next time it happens, because you probably are due another wake-up call.
I am definitely due another wake-up call.
You can always come back to the hashtag #LOLvirus group that I've been running on Facebook. There's quite a few lols there, but you can't read them in your sleep, obviously.
No. But I do remember once telling myself a joke in the car and then bursting out laughing because I'd never heard it before.
Can you remember what that joke was?
No, but it's more of a long-winded story than I want to tell, I think.
There's obviously more programs to be made, so yes.
More programs, yeah.
Lovely. Wonderful. And I'm intrigued by the construct of jokes, actually, which is why I said, oh, do you know that joke at the moment? Something that never fails to get my attention is when someone says, can I tell you a joke? I'm always interested to know whether it's going to be something new or different. So we've shaken your tree, you lovely man, and now we're still in the clearing, going, milking the metaphor for all we can. And now we're going to talk about alchemy and gold. Now, when you are at purpose and in flow, and by the way, your alchemy and gold is implicit in what you've been giving so far, but what would you say you are all about when you're at purpose and in flow? What's the alchemy and gold that you like to bring?
I don't really understand the question.
I will reframe it. So when you're in your happy place doing what you love to do the most, that's what I'm defining as being alchemy and gold. So what is it you most enjoy bringing to the world?
Laughter and knowledge. So I remember I often do talks at schools to students. Sometimes they can be 5 years old, sometimes it's A-level students. And I just love being in front of them all and just telling them stories about Tanzania and the work we do, and seeing people's faces kind of go, oh, okay, now I get that. And I did one with some 5-year-olds, and the questions that came back afterwards seemed to just focus on the shoes that the girls in the photos were wearing. And did they have Clarks? And would they like shoes with flowers on? And the next 10 minutes just focused on, would they like shoes with this on? Or would they like shoes on that on? They were so sad that the people didn't have shoes. So that was, to them, was the most important thing. And can I give my pocket money so that people can buy shoes? And it kind of just melts your heart that at that age, people want to support people have a better life.
And so poignant that the logo is about the footprint. Your own first encounter with the need to do what you're doing was the idea of feet, and the rather darker story of rats having eaten feet. And now you're in a school sharing laughter and knowledge, and they're just lovely and fixating on the feet. So there's something really iconic about the footprint of you and the Livingstone Tanzania Trust.
I hadn't really put that together.
It's my job to make connections. We're here all week. So I love that. And also just the sheer joy, and it's humanity that binds us all, which is something I'm really struck with in talking to you. So this is really, really enjoyable and stimulating for me too. So thank you. It's a real pleasure and a gift that you're bringing, which, by the way, your gift is what alchemy and gold is in how I am framing it in this construct. So I love that. So just to recap for you, it's laughter and knowledge, which, that's one of the best answers to this question. You're episode 28 of my podcast, and I have to say that's one of my very, very favourite answers to that. Okay, so we've shaken your tree, we've talked about alchemy and gold, and now finally I'm going to award you with a cake, Mr. Julian Page, and you're going to be invited, nom 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 nom, and you, as you're a caterer and a chef, you can have made it yourself. Do you prefer to make your own cakes, or do you prefer being given cakes?
Given cakes, please. I'll give you the address later.
Lovely. And any particular flavour, dear, that you like?
No, all of them, except fruit cakes.
Oh yeah, Dundee fruitcake. I'm not dissing. Anyway, so I don't want to tangent myself. So the metaphor is that you're now going to put a cherry on the cake is my final invitation to you, which is again open to interpretation as a metaphor. The cherry on the cake could be the best piece of advice you've ever been given. It could be a favourite inspirational quote. It could be something that someone said to you once that you've never forgotten. Or it could be advice that you may give in counselling a younger version of yourself. So it's an opportunity for you to impart a bit of wisdom as a legacy to this conversation. So how would you like to interpret the cake and the cherry?
I would like to interpret the cake and the cherry as two separate things. So my first piece of advice that I just think is brilliant is that beautiful phrase, be the change you want to see in the world. So that's something that, I strive for every day, and I fail every day, but keep striving.
Oh, you just froze momentarily. You just froze momentarily.
And then the piece of advice, sorry.
You just froze momentarily, just at the very end of that. And
so it's be the change you want to see.
Yes. And is that a Gandhi quote?
It is a Gandhi quote.
Yep.
And it's really difficult to achieve. We all want to be perfect recyclers. We all want to be perfect non-Amazon buyers, all of that sort of stuff. But actually, it's really difficult. But we've got to put the effort in. And every day I think, yes, I must try and try and try. So that keeps me going. That's my word of advice to people, is try and be that. But the advice to my younger self would most definitely be, don't drink that 2-litre bottle of cider.
Is that just one dark episode where that was just a big mistake?
Well, actually, there were several, but hopefully that advice would carry on.
And do you still like cider to this day, or has it put you off it?
Can't stand it.
Because of that?
Can't stand it at all. Yeah, because of that. That martini. Can't do it anymore, I'm sorry.
For a long while, I couldn't do gin, because the first time I ever got off my chonk at Hadley Castle near Southend was drinking neat gin for reasons I still don't understand. But, so not good. And I luckily I never went down that slippery slope again. It was just that frisson of youth of, I could if I wanted to, just exploration, which obviously had similarly wrapped around your flagon of cider. So yes, beautifully and deftly delivered. I'm going to ask you a very specific question about the charity in a moment, but anything else you want to say about anything we've talked about to this point?
No, it's been really interesting having to think about these things, because I never really do. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
And if we want to find out more about Livingstone Tanzania Trust or about you, Julian Page, on the interweb, where can we go?
We can go to www.livingstonetanzaniatrust.com. And that's that. And we're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I think we've got nearly everything covered.
Beautiful.
I don't know what half of them do, but we've got them covered.
Well, you're pulling strings for other people to worry about that shit, because you can't be good at everything, obviously, but you're good at many, many things we can see. So we don't live in a perfect world, as we've been exploring and realising and appreciating. But if you had one sort of wish for the charity in this current period in history, what would it be?
To survive. The charities, all the small charities, especially the small international charities, are really struggling. I think there's statistics that at least half of them will close within the next 18 months because all of the funders are focusing on UK COVID or have stopped donating because there's no dividends coming into their pots, so that they can't give any money out. So small charities like us are absolutely just struggling to get through. We will get through. I know we will. But, it doesn't stop us praying, because it's hard for everybody at the moment. I know it's hard for everybody everywhere. But for small charities that are doing so much good work across the globe, it would be devastating for them to stop, because the impact actually is huge. So, yeah, I would want all small charities to survive this terrible time.
So, thank you so much for gifting us with your presence here on the Good Listening To podcast. You've been listening to Julian Page, MD and Trustee of the Livingstone Tanzania Trust. Thank you very much indeed. Good night.
Thank you.